Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Phase 2 webinar, Living the Dream, Building a MarTech Stack You Love. My name is Chris Jorgensen, and I'm excited to turn things over to today's presenter, Karina Schuelke, in just a few moments to get us started. In this webinar, we're going to cover how you can build your MarTech stack and evolve it over time in line with the needs of your three distinct audiences: your fellow employees, your customers, and your stakeholders. We'll talk about working through blockers you may be experiencing, aligning your stack for data and analytics, bringing your tools together in line with your strategy, and measuring success. When you leave today, you will have some concrete actions you can take to get started right away and start moving towards building a MarTech stack you truly love that will serve you well for the future. For those of you who might not know us, Phase 2 is a digital experience agency moving industry-leading organizations forward with powerful ideas and executable strategies built on open technology. Founded in 2001 and headquartered in Arlington, Virginia, we have offices located in New York City, Portland, and San Francisco. Experts in the complete digital experience, our team provides services including research and insights, strategy and design, and engineering expertise for building digital platforms. Through the services offered, Phase 2 enables engagement with target audiences in any channel on any device. Today's presenter is Karina Schuelke. As a strategist here at Phase 2, Karina's years of diverse and in-depth experience across the customer journey include a consistent theme: creating and implementing practical solutions to the business and technical challenges organizations face as they strive to craft compelling experiences for their audiences. As a big picture thinker with a concern for the details, Karina sees business systems holistically. She focuses on developing systems that work cohesively, deeply aligned to the needs and strategy of the business, while both efficient and effective for the teams working to deliver an outstanding customer experience. To craft the solutions that create this experience for the customers and employees, Karina leverages her expertise in a wide variety of MarTech, including CRMs like Salesforce and other related technologies, along with concrete know-how in change management, process design, and data and analytics. Karina, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. So let's take a quick look at what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about your key audiences that Chris mentioned a moment ago, questions to get you started as you consider your MarTech stack, blockers that might be holding you back as you move towards that stack you love, leveraging data and reporting across the stack, connecting tools to support your strategy, really thinking about integration and how that's going to work, and then demonstrating your success. And at the end, we will have time for some questions. So feel free to send those in and we'd be happy to answer them either here on the webinar at the end. We will have time for some, or if we can't get to all of them, we can always gladly follow up with you afterwards. Let's go ahead and dive in. So first, you want to consider the strategy. It's critical to recognize that your MarTech stack sits within the world of your overall organizational strategy. There's a lot of different kinds of technology out there. We all know it. And most of it your organization does not need. If you've ever seen the great MarTech 5000 chart, there's a lot of technology on there. Most of it is really not going to achieve what you need for your business. For the technology you do need, it needs to be aligned to your strategy to maximize its value. So let's consider what that might look like. Here's a simple example. If your sales team and your marketing team both send mass emails to prospects as a part of moving them forward in the funnel, which is of course the business objective, you typically need different technology than if it's only the marketing team sending the mass emails. And even if you don't need different technology, you'll likely need different permissions in the same technology, maybe your CRM. So the business decision about sending the mass emails actually affects your tech stack and how you're going to put it together. When you buy, replace, implement, integrate, whatever you're doing to your MarTech stack, it has to be in line with the strategy of the organization and the associated business objectives. So as we dive into the specifics of the technology, it's important to remember for everything that follows that you have to consider the strategy first. When you solve for the blockers and the reporting challenges and ensuring your three audiences have everything they need, the strategy is the frame that makes all of that meaningful and roll up to an endpoint that will truly benefit the company and give you that MarTech stack that you love. Your three audiences are counting on you to make sure that you have a MarTech stack that is going to work for them and meet their needs. The three audiences who rely on the MarTech stack, as Chris mentioned earlier, are your employees who use the software, your customers who experience your company in part through the software you select, and your stakeholders who need information out of that software to make decisions. So let's talk about each of them in turn. Employees. This is the obvious one. Everyone knows that your employees have to use your MarTech stack. That's pretty much a given. In many cases, you may have chosen the tools in the first place because an employee had experience with it or really liked it or felt it filled a particular need. Fundamentally, employees need to have the ability to use the technology they're given to do their jobs and deliver a great customer experience. If they aren't empowered by their technology, it's incredibly difficult to succeed, and it's very difficult to create a great customer experience when you don't have that technology doing what you need to make it happen. Training can be enormously beneficial, but all the training in the world won't fix a bad tool. Bad tools expose you to all kinds of problems, including technical debt, workarounds, creating bad habits in employees, the list goes on and on and on. That can increase friction to such a degree that it decreases the overall value of the tool for the business and therefore the value of the stack as a whole. And it's certainly possible for a tool to be just plain bad. Of course that can happen, but mostly what happens is a tool is bad for your business specifically and the needs of your organization. It might be an awesome tool for the business down the road and do all kinds of amazing things for them. Even one just like yours, mostly, but not work for your organization for any number of reasons. This is one of the reasons that employees can fight so hard for their favorite tool and why it's critical to still run every tool through a full software evaluation before you purchase. Everyone using MarTech knows they have to have tools they can work with. They know bad tools exist that work in ways they don't want to work, and they want to bring in tools that will be a great fit for the company. And won't the tool they love be great for the company because it was great somewhere else? The problem is that out of wanting to make a great choice for the company and the employees, it's very easy to use this kind of mentality to make a choice for the organization that really only works as long as the employee or the small group of employees potentially is there. Once they move on, it can be very easy to find yourself with a tool that no one really knows how to use or even why it was purchased in the first place. This can lead to stack bloat, which means tools that have significantly overlapping capabilities sitting next to each other in your stack, or tools that fit a strategy that was true when that employee was with the organization, but no longer connect to the current strategy. For this reason, every tool has to be valued against the organizational needs in line with company strategy and the specifics of the existing stack. That opens a much more likely to succeed path with greater likelihood for overall enrollment across the organization for your stack and the tools that are in it. This is a key place where change management really comes in, because no matter what, your employees are a critical audience for your stack. If they can't use it, they won't be able to be successful. And if they don't want to use it, they'll often find ways to go around it, which will effectively block so many other things you want your stack to achieve. So your stack must, absolutely must, empower your employees to do their jobs. Let's talk about customers. Your customers care about your technology, even when they don't interact with it directly. The direct interactions, such as emails they receive coming from your MarTech stack, are way more obvious. But what about your CRM? Well, if your CRM isn't well implemented, your team may not be empowered to successfully do their job. Then, instead of enabling your customers, your technology may well be hindering them by holding your employees back. So your customers care about the technology you use and how well your stack works, even when they don't see it, because they see the results of it. They see the experiences that they have because of how your employees are interacting with the stack. This is because the software we select and how we implement it powerfully influences every aspect of the customer journey. Here's why. Software comes with a perspective. Even tools ostensibly doing the same things were developed by unique teams trying to solve slightly different problems with their own specific preferences, ways of doing things, and biases. And all of that feeds into the tool because it's a tool made by a group of people. Side note, if you've never tried it, it is absolutely miserable working with a tool that has a different way of thinking than your org or your other technologies. Even something like email unsubscribe is handled differently from different tools, as I'm sure all of you know. The perspective pushes which features are created, which then pushes you to make decisions in certain ways. And boom, the technology you've selected has now influenced your customer journey, maybe significantly. One great example of this to consider is data security. Your organization has a perspective on data security and how you collect and handle customer data. Whatever that perspective is, however it works in your organization, you need tools that are in line with that so you can treat your customers' data in the way that they expect. And different technologies, even within the same category, handle data security in different ways. They have different policies about it. They have different features that you can use for data security. And so that's going to play in how the technology works with your organization and how that perspective shapes what you can do with your customer journey. Let's talk about the last audience, the stakeholders. The needs of your stakeholders are all about data and analytics. There's many obvious stakeholders, like the VP of marketing for your MarTech stack, but many of your stakeholders across your stack may not necessarily leap readily to mind. For example, marketing is a stakeholder of sales. They need data that the sales team is collecting and gathering. Customer service is a stakeholder for the website. They need to know that people can find things on the website that hopefully decrease customer service calls, or that the FAQ is answering frequently asked questions that they're getting in the customer service team, and so on. These individuals rely on the data your stack produces to do their jobs, and often your analysis as well if you are working in data and analytics, to make good decisions for your organization. If you're involved with any aspect of your MarTech stack, then it's a part of your job to make sure that the people who need that data get it and that they get your best analysis as well. Good data and analytics people are generally good storytellers. Here's an example. 35 leads is, by itself, a completely meaningless number. Context makes it a story. What does lead mean at your organization? Where did those leads come from? How long did it take to acquire the leads? And what did those leads do before they became leads? And what did they do afterwards? And so on. Context. Analysis with segmentation helps that number then become something actionable. Did we get more of those leads this way or that way or this other way? What about regional distribution, by page of the website, or by which email that we sent, and so on? That's how you take a number and turn it into a story that makes sense for your organization and provides your executives and your stakeholders with actionable insights on direction. Believe it or not, your stack is perfectly capable of helping you do this, even if you're not there today. In a few minutes, we're going to talk about how and how you break through the blockers to help get there. As you ponder the needs of these three different audiences, we're going to go through a couple of questions to consider that will guide you as you start to think how to work on your stack. These are just a sample, but they should help get you started. Here's some general questions. Who's using the tools today? Who are the stakeholders? How do the tools integrate? Customer journey questions. What does your customer journey, lead funnel, sales process, existing client relationship building look like today? How do your prospects and existing customers interact with your stack? Because your tech stack is integral to the customer journey, it really helps to know what it looks like and to understand the relationship between the technology and the experience you're creating. That's really critical because of the experience that you're shaping using your technology. History questions. This is a very simple question, but it can unlock a floodgate of understanding of how you got to the point you are today. Often you don't want to make decisions based on history, but it can absolutely inform your approach to decision making, and also in some cases eliminate some options. Maybe you were thinking about a new type of technology and you discover that 2 tools in that category were already examined and don't meet your organization's security standards. Well, that saved you some time. Maybe you discover that a particular tool fulfilled a critical function for several years, and in the last 6 months, before maybe you started looking at the tech stack, did it stop being used? Well, now you know, and you can provide another check to be sure that critical function is now being adequately covered by other things, and you don't need that piece of technology anymore. Very simple question can provide you with lots of insights about how to think about what you're going to do next and really guide your approach to future decisions. Some questions about your current tools. You're looking at your tech stack, you got to know what you're currently using, what's working, what needs improvement, anything not working, all those kinds of things. Very, very important to actually understand what is happening today. Now that you know about the 3 audiences your stack serves, let's turn to common blockers that stop you from providing all the experience all of them are looking for and talk about how to break through. There are certainly more you may be experiencing, but these are 3 we see again and again. Technical debt, lack of integration, and outdated technology full of important history. One quick side note, there is another common problem. Someone bought a piece of technology, it was never implemented, and no one really knows why it was purchased. Or maybe you do know why it was purchased, but the business needs changed and now it doesn't make sense anymore. Maybe no one has even seen a login, they just know it exists somewhere. This is less of a blocker since it's not really integrated with anything, it's not being used, and more of a business decision. Are we going to try to make this piece of technology work? in which case we have a host of other decisions to make as well? Or do we simply need to acknowledge that it's a sunk cost, we don't need it anymore regardless of what happened in the past, and we need to reach out to our account representative for this tool and say so? Again, it's a common problem, but inaction is worse than action. And while those discussions are going on, you aren't blocked on addressing the needs of the rest of the tech stack that you are currently using. So let's talk about the blockers, what they are, and how to overcome them. Starting with technical debt. Maybe multiple people over time have worked on a core piece of technology in a disjointed way. Maybe several pieces of technology were built out when the business had different needs. Maybe different departments, teams, divisions in your organization purchased the same piece of technology and are now using it in very different ways in multiple instances. Technical debt is normal, and if your system is reviewed on a semi-regular basis to clean it up, I wouldn't worry about it too much. It probably hasn't been able to get too much out of hand. However, if you have enough that's blocking your efficiency, your reporting, or even worse, your ability to function in key areas, you need to take some time and address it. Technical debt is not fun to address, at least not for most people, so we just need to acknowledge that. It can be overwhelming sometimes to look at your technology and acknowledge it isn't working because it's too built out in the wrong ways, not built out in the right ones, or full of data you don't need, maybe obscuring some data you do. Very difficult to upgrade because customizations have been built out over time, or difficult to use because there's too many required fields. That can be overwhelming when you try to look at it and see the different things that are going on and try to figure out how to move forward. Some people try to build additional workarounds for that, which just increases the complications. Sometimes the best plan is to rip and replace. If you have a lot of technical debt for systems you don't really use anymore, removing and simply starting over can, in some circumstances, just make the most sense. In most cases, however, we have to wade through the technical debt and clean it up to move forward. It's tough, but the reward is a system that works for you instead of against you, especially when it's a core system that a lot of people are using on a very, very regular basis in order to do their jobs. So here's the steps to clean up technical debt. Step back and assess what's there. What's the real problem? Then delete or otherwise remove everything you can. This leaves you with only the things you have to go through in detail still in play. For example, you have 200 automations. You think only 10 to 12 of them are really needed based on how you're using the system today. Delete the 120 you are sure you don't need right out of the gate, and then you only have 80 to go through to figure out the ones you actually want to keep. Makes things a little simpler by just cleaning out the stuff you're 100% certain you don't need right from the get-go. Then get detailed about what's left. When you're not certain if something should be deleted or reworked, spend time with it. Figure out why it exists if you can. Delete what you're sure you don't need, keep what you do, and keep going until the only things left are the ones you actually want to take with you into the future. Then refine. If you can simplify a workflow based on current business needs, do it. If you can increase data cleanliness with an additional automation, do it. Use this as an opportunity to increase your effectiveness and efficiency with your stack and move forward into the future with a fresh start. As you go, consider all three of your audiences. Here's an example that may help. Sometimes automation creates a lot more problems than it's worth. If you're an organization that uses the concept of leads, not all do, but many, and you have automated lead assignment that was set up a long time ago, that might be worth revisiting. Sometimes automated lead assignment is a huge time saver, but sometimes it actually wastes a lot of time and needs to be treated as technical debt and cleaned out because a manual process is actually much faster and more effective if designed and executed correctly. If that's the case, your employees will thank you for less headaches and less cleanup from an unhelpful automated process. Your customers or clients will thank you because they will get connected to the information or person they need more quickly. And your stakeholders will thank you because lead-related metrics should improve. So that's an example of how one aspect of technical debt can actually affect all three of your audiences. Lack of integration. Sometimes technology doesn't have to integrate. There are situations where that's the case. There are deliberate reasons why it might not, for example, to comply with regulations. But in most cases, you'll want most of the disparate pieces of your tech stack to connect with at least some of the other pieces. There are many reasons why we do this. It saves manual entry, sometimes huge amounts of manual entry, and the associated likelihood for errors that comes with manual entry. It has a significant impact on your ability to gather data and conduct analysis. It can greatly increase your ability to comply with privacy regulations, which of course there's a lot of them at the moment. It can greatly enhance your customer experience. There's so many reasons why integration can make an enormous difference with your stack. If any part of your tech stack is currently living on an island, or maybe even on a peninsula, and you think it shouldn't be, it's worth diving into why and looking at ways to bring it to shore with the rest of your stack. Here's how you fix this. Figure out what needs to be integrated, then make it happen. Or, well, maybe it's a little more complicated than that. First, you have to figure out what you want to integrate and why, and that ties directly back to your strategy. Does your social monitoring system need to integrate with your marketing automation system, your CRM, or both? Figure out who needs to use what and what kind of reporting you need to do to figure out where the data needs to go. Then what do you need the integration to actually do? Do you need it to pass huge amounts of data back and forth in real time? Do you need it to process a very small amount of data in real time? Do you need it to process batches of data nightly? Do you need it to trigger the next step in the customer journey, say sending out an email to a customer based on an interaction with a different system? Do you need it to include data reconciliation like a CDP does? The answer to these questions and others like it will guide you to the next question. What type of integration makes the most sense? Very important. Many applications in your MarTech stack will have pre-built integrations that you can use. Use them. If they work, use them. In many cases, they will meet most of your needs. If they don't, then we're talking about custom integrations. Sometimes you can make one work through business rules, and there are tools like Zapier that allow you to essentially build your own connections without doing custom integrations. And if that doesn't meet your needs, you can always build integrations through a variety of different mechanisms. To unblock your lack of integration, you need to take action on the results of these questions. We do strongly recommend you map out your integrations during the planning process. It makes it much easier to see where data is flowing and how and why. And as paying attention to the individual customer's data continues to increase importance, it's critical you know exactly how you're gathering this data and all the places it's going. Integration can make a huge difference to your employees, saving a lot of time copying and pasting, and your stakeholders will appreciate the noticeable difference in errors. But even more than that, your customers will thank you when they get their needs met more quickly. For example, if a physical locations database is integrated with a digital database, then customers with physical interactions can access those records digitally and vice versa. So the digital and the physical worlds can blend for their customer experience. This gives them a far more complete and effective experience with your organization. And the last blocker that is so very common, outdated technology with history. Change is a constant for marketers, as all of you on this call know. In the MarTech replacement survey for 2020, authors Chris Elwell, Jennifer Cannon, and Scott Brinker discovered that 83% of their respondents reported upgrading or replacing at least one MarTech application in the last 12 months. I'm sure many of you have replaced pieces of your MarTech stack at some point in your careers. That's a lot of change. And change is hard on all three of your audiences. But if you get better features, better integration capabilities, and lower costs, which is what a large percentage of respondents said they got by upgrading, then ultimately you benefit all three of those audiences. In this world, having outdated technology you no longer need or want, but that loaded with history is extremely common as you're changing tools. Sometimes a tool you need to replace doesn't have a lot of history. Okay, you got lucky. But maybe you have a tool that's not on the table to replace because of that history, but no one can really work with it anymore. Maybe someone built a separate tool to present the data and everyone is crossing their fingers it doesn't break. Regardless of the circumstances, if you have history in a tool and replacement is imminent, or you want it to be imminent, this is a blocker you need to get past to free your tech stack from the weight of the past. So how would you address this? First, confirm you really need the history. History is absolutely awesome, but you don't always need it. Find out if you can be pleasantly surprised. Next, find out if you need the history just in case. If that's the situation, maybe an export of the data you can dump in a database and only query if you need it solves your problem, and you can do that and you can move on. You may be able to do this in more cases than you think. Push to really understand the value of that history and how much it needs to be a part of the actual day-to-day versus just available in case. If you do actually need the data to be accessible to all of your existing systems and to any new systems you add, that's when it gets harder. In that case, here's what you do. Clean up the history. Make sure it's meaningful to your current business context. If you have to edit labels, if you have to break things into multiple fields, make sure it's the way that you're tracking and using your data today so that it will all be aligned. Prepare the new system to receive it, wherever it's going, so it's actually findable. Make a migration plan, manual or automated, and execute. Some systems do support you doing a migration process, and if your data set is too large for a manual migration, there are a lot of different ways to automate it, so you can get the data over once it's cleaned up. Really think about your audiences as you work through the history. What will your stakeholders need for their reporting to make sense? What kind of data will your customers need if any of that history touches on their experiences? What about customer data privacy? That may affect how long you can keep certain data. Also consider your employees. How much history do you want them to have to manage? And what history is useful for them for the day-to-day? Maybe it's useful to know how a similar campaign ran 2 years ago, but totally useless to have an immense database that stopped receiving data 5 years ago. You have to go back to the strategy and what you're trying to achieve as an organization and how you need your tech stack to run as a result, and then how your audiences need to experience it to determine what needs to happen with that historical data and how you need to present it for the future. Let's talk a little bit about leveraging data and reporting in your stack now that you've moved past some of your blockers. We hear constantly about how reporting and data aren't working for our clients. The 3 blockers we addressed previously all contribute to and magnify reporting problems, but the biggest fundamental problem you likely face is that none of the tools in the stack were configured or implemented or integrated with reporting in mind, neglecting that stakeholder audience we discussed earlier. Remember how we talked about first the strategy earlier? You probably have a lot of different goals that tell you if you're on track for your strategy. So you need your technology to provide data and reporting you can use to see how you're doing against your goals, which will tell you how your strategy is working. This ties your reporting to the goals of your business strategy, and the setup of your stack is what makes it possible. If you're having challenges seeing data across the customer journey, lacking insights on how different departments contribute to revenue, or struggling to ensure your KPIs are reported accurately, we're about to dive into how you fix that. Look at the whole board. It's an expression that's been used a lot in movies and TV shows. You've probably heard it before, but it applies so very well to problems with reporting and data collection. If you know this is a challenge for your organization, look at the whole board of your tech stack and ask yourself some questions. What are my KPIs? Are they action-oriented? Am I measuring the right things? You need to start here if you have any qualms about the reporting in your tech stack. No sense in making any changes if you don't know why or what you would want to achieve from it. Also, KPIs have to be action-oriented. They need to guide you to places you can explore to move your ultimate business goals forward. Next, where do you get your data from? What kind of data do you need to see? What technologies house your biggest data sources? What are their reporting capabilities like? Do you have any separate designated reporting tools? Do you have tools that store the data you need, on-site analytics tools for website data, CRM or ERP or financial system for revenue data, and so on? Does the data exist to measure these KPIs exist in my tech stack? It's tough to measure lead source, for example, if your lead sources are all over the place, everyone drops in whatever they want, and no one knows what any of it means. You have to fix that before you can do any measuring that includes lead source. Or if you want to track partnership information, you have to have the info on your partners available somewhere in order to be able to measure it. And it's not enough to put in the fields for these kinds of items. You need governance to ensure the data actually gets entered consistently and correctly according to your definitions. Automation is great for governance where possible. A field gets set automatically when a certain action is taken, things like that. Further, it needs to be efficient to get the data out of your tech stack. If you want to analyze lifetime customer value, for example, on a regular basis, you need a way to do that with, at most, a few clicks. Otherwise, that's an analysis you'll only conduct on an extremely periodic basis when someone has the time to sit down and do it manually. And with no standard way to report on it that's built into the tools, you'll probably have a different calculated approach every time as well. And so it'll be difficult to see the trends over time. If the data exists, it's much more straightforward to make this work. Simply put, figure out why you can't get it out. Is it just because you haven't? Do you need more integrations to make it meaningful? Do you need someone to make the connection to your BI tool work again, or maybe for the first time? Do you need to take the data you already have and just realign or reframe it for your KPIs? The problem we most often see is when the data already exists is that people don't trust it for one reason or another. Maybe you have a goal in Google Analytics, but you're not sure it's firing correctly, for example. What's worse is if you have a place to aggregate data like a BI tool, but no one uses it because they don't trust it, so they keep going back to the source. This is absolutely fixable for you and your team. Take the time to make sure the data is right. Do some significant validation and get buy-in so people will trust it. Then validate again on a scheduled basis and continue refining so data confidence continues to increase over time. It will take time, but you can build trust in the data. And once you do that, reporting becomes a much more streamlined process, and you and everyone else can focus on analysis, which is where you all really want to spend your time. If the data doesn't exist, that's when things get harder, sometimes a lot harder. I'm not talking about when it's a matter of cleaning up a field, standardizing usage, or just adding something like date proposal sent. Those may not have historical data, but you can add those kinds of fields and get your data aligned to your KPIs going forward. It takes some time, it takes some work, but it's very doable. I'm talking about using your tools in ways that block data collection, or maybe not using the right tools in the first place. Maybe you're using a tool that has very poor internal reporting capabilities and a limited API, for example. That's a challenge. Or maybe you're not using a particular piece of functionality in a tool that would really unlock your reporting capabilities, but using that piece would require changing your workflow in the way that you're using the tool and the teams that are working with it. That's harder to address. Sometimes workarounds can make a lot of sense. If you can build in a small piece of custom code, say in an integration, no one changes their workflow, the tools keep running, and you unlock a lot of reporting data, why wouldn't you? That sounds like a no-brainer. However, more often organizations wind up building lots of workarounds and keep tools that aren't really working to avoid having to deal with the changes required to make the situation more functional and smoother for everybody. And there's always a cost-benefit analysis. In a lot of cases, it may make a lot of sense to say, this technology is working for us as is. We know we can't get the reporting. We're just going to acknowledge it and we're going to move on. And that's fine, as long as it makes sense for your organization and the reporting isn't foundational. But for foundational reporting, if you strategically and deliberately plan to make a change to the workflow or change the technology to get that key data, it can really unlock a whole world in terms of what you can see and how you can positively affect the business through that new visibility. When it comes to data, like we mentioned before, it's all about addressing that third audience, the stakeholders. So a ton of this effort and the decisions you make here and the cost-benefit analysis is going to be driven by what they need to see to be successful in their efforts. The MarTech replacement survey I referenced earlier found that measuring ROI, compliance, and data management capabilities were the most frequently cited reasons for upgrading components of the MarTech stack. In other words, for many organizations, they will make an effort to change parts of their MarTech stack if they aren't getting what they need from it in terms of the data. You may need to do that, but the best place to start is always with what you do have and to push that to the maximum before you determine that anything needs to change. That way you maximize the value of your MarTech stack and ensure that any new tools you get are exactly what you need. This can get pretty abstract, so let's talk through a simple example of seeing the whole board for marketing reporting. Let's say marketing has three KPIs, which is of course ridiculous, but this is just an example. MQLs, which is their conversion KPI, white paper download rate, and an average number of pages per session. Fundamentally though, marketing needs to be able to prove that they are making a difference to revenue, to the bottom line. If you are listening and you're a marketer in this boat, don't worry. It's incredibly common to have a hard time making the connection between marketing efforts and dollars. But no matter where you are in this process, it is something where you can absolutely move the needle forward towards that goal and see the difference your efforts make in a more concrete way. So seeing the whole board for marketing involves considering revenue. It may not be a KPI for marketing, although in some cases that makes sense, but at the very least, it needs to be a point of information. Once you have that connection set up into your technology, using governance to ensure data accuracy, you could do some pretty awesome things like measure the difference between sales cycle from first interaction for brand new engagements versus repeat deals or ongoing deals. Make a more direct connection between social interactions and dollars. Create a more robust feedback loop around the value of MQLs and more readily continue to refine the criteria for them. More clearly understand the cost benefit of higher cost activities like direct mail or even event attendance and sponsorship. More accurately refine paid advertising, not just based on metrics like CTR, page views, and content downloads, but also based on ultimate purchases. These kinds of metrics and KPIs can do a lot to help you refine your efforts in the ways that matter most. In addition to helping your organization, they may also help justify hiring. You might be able to show the value add of a new team member by demonstrating a connection between your need and the opportunity. You might also be able to earn a promotion by demonstrating with specific information all the ways you've improved the pertinent KPIs for your job performance. And you can also ensure that you and your team are valued at your true worth for all that you contribute. When you combine all of this with the fact that your KPIs are action-oriented, as we discussed on the last slide, then you know where to look when the numbers aren't moving the way you want, or you know what to do more of when everything is going great. That increases your opportunity to add value to all three audiences by creating a better experience for each. Let's talk about how you connect your tools together, aka integrate them to support your strategy. Like I said at the beginning, the technology you have needs to be aligned to your strategy to maximize its value. And a critical part of that alignment is how you set up your integrations based on the needs of your three audiences and your strategy for the tech stack. Let's unpack the example we talked about earlier where the sales team potentially sends mass emails in addition to the marketing team. Here's how the business decision about sending mass emails might affect your tech stack. If just the marketing team sends mass emails, it's fairly straightforward. They need a marketing automation system that sends those emails and tracks all the relevant stats about them, runs email campaigns, and so on. Depending on the reporting needs of the organization and the needs of the sales team, a few of those details may need to be passed to the sales team in the CRM. Otherwise, the marketing automation system can typically handle it for the needs of many organizations. And most marketing automation systems allow at least some of that functionality through their out-of-the-box integration to get data back into the CRM. But if the sales team is also sending mass emails, the question becomes immediately, what kind? Because sales teams in different organizations send very different kinds of mass emails. If they're sending cold outreach emails, a sales enablement tool designed for the purpose might be the right choice. If they're handling at least some follow-up emails from marketing activities, they may also need some access to the marketing automation tool. They may also need their CRM to be enabled for mass emailing. If they're sending emails with attached sales collateral to individual prospects or to prospect groups, either one at a time or as an individual nurturing campaigns, they may need a completely separate piece of technology altogether, maybe even a specific landing page system or a DAM or DAM-like piece of software that can support that kind of personal nurturing with the attached collateral. Then all these pieces have to integrate. Here's an example. Maybe the sales enablement cold outreach tool integrates with the CRM, which integrates with the marketing automation tool. Then the separate landing page system integrates with the cold outreach tool and the DAM to create the custom landing pages rapidly, and then all relevant data pushes back into the CRM for final reporting, aligned with what's coming out of the marketing automation tool to give you a complete picture. And is there a world where marketing might need some of this technology as well? All that I just mentioned the sales team might have in this case? Absolutely. It completely depends on the company strategy, how that affects the needs, roles, and responsibilities of both teams, and then how that should play out in the types of technology each team uses, how they work together, and what the integration points actually look like. Let's talk about demonstrating your success after you have asked these questions and done all of this kind of work for your audiences. There's no denying that this is some work and it's a time investment. You have to make sure it's worth it, and especially as you engage in a cost-benefit analysis like we were talking about earlier. So how do you know that it's worth it? It's straightforward. Measure before, measure afterwards. It's true of any measurement. Before you run a campaign, you must likely set targets for what you hope to achieve. Then afterwards, you see if you achieved them. If you make changes to your website, you look at what the relevant stats are now, then say, okay, if we change X, we expect Y measurement to increase. Even if you don't always do it, and it's definitely a best practice, but even if you don't always do it, it's what you do when the numbers are critical and you must know what changed. The same applies to this kind of work. Like anything, select your measurements based on what makes sense for your business and your strategy. Did you need to save time with a particular process, increase your content engagement, make a particular process easier for your customers or for an employee, increase your data quality? Look for the goal you aim to achieve in line with company strategy, and then choose your measurements accordingly. Here's some example measurements. Trust in the data, steps in a process or time to complete a process that's relevant for your business or for a customer process, like a checkout process. Customer effort score, standard measurements you already use, like engagement metrics. If you're working on technology changes designed to increase customer engagement, then that's something you'll want to monitor as you make those changes. The benefit of measuring is very simple. It tells you what worked and what didn't, and helps you refine your efforts for the next time and the next set of changes. We've talked about a lot of different things today: understanding your three audiences and what they need, dissecting the blockers that may be holding you back and ways to move past those, ensuring you're successfully leveraging your stack to pull out the data you need, connecting your tools in line with your strategy, and at the end, knowing that you were successful. Of course, you cannot tackle all of that at once. Nobody could. And it can be very hard to know where to begin. So here are 3 steps you can take right now, today, to start digging in on everything we've discussed and create forward momentum. Step 1. Take a step back and look at your stack. What's working? What's not? Step 2, ask some of the questions we've outlined today as you consider your own stack and your own organization. Step 3, pick one piece, just one, of technology you work with every day. Ideally, it's one you know very well. What's one way it could be improved along the lines we've discussed today? Consider what it would take to make that happen. Those questions and those steps will enable you to begin the process of effecting change for your MarTech stack. Don't get discouraged. A MarTech stack you love that works for your 3 audiences is closer than you realize. And good luck.
Thank you, Karina. At this time, we do want to answer any questions you might have. I see that we have a few questions already in the queue, so we'll jump right in. And if you'd like to add a question, just hit the Q&A icon. Karina, our first question comes from Michael, and he asks, single vendor integrated stack or best of breed stack? What's your recommendation and why?
Great question, Michael. So I'm not going to get the stats right off the top of my head, but I want to say it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 70%, according to a recent study, where organizations are going with the best of breed versus the single vendor. It makes a lot of sense. Your organization is your organization. Even within the same industry, you have a different organization than the company right down the road. So there's a lot of logic there to saying this is the stack that we need that's particular for us. Even many companies that do standardize on a single vendor, it's a study I'm remembering that's maybe 2 years old now, but it seems very pertinent based on current trends in the industry. Even many companies that do standardize on a single vendor are finding that they need to supplement with other technologies to meet their business needs because their business is unique. So that being said, there's a lot of consolidation going on in the MarTech space and a lot of acquisitions. So if you find a company that owns a lot of different kinds of technology and many of them seem to align with your business needs and you like doing business with them, that can be a really great place to start when evaluating new pieces of technology you might want to acquire, but it doesn't mean you should necessarily just say, oh, this company owns this piece of technology, let's go with that. Really lean towards getting the right tool for the job. And in many cases, for many organizations, that's going to mean a best of breed tech stack.
Awesome. Thanks, Karina. Our next question comes from Abigail, and she says, do you recommend having your MarTech stack completely solidified before embarking on a personalization strategy?
Completely. That's a strong word for sure. Very few things are ever complete, although I know we would all love to be able to say it was all done and we buttoned it up and it's all perfect. I would think more, Abigail, I would think more in terms of solid when you're thinking about personalization or your stack as a whole, where you have something that's stable, that's really functional for you. A lot of the pieces are working, but it's really going to be an evolving process over time with your MarTech stack, although I completely hear you on wanting it to be complete. If your MarTech stack is solid, then it's a great time to start with personalization. You can start with personalization across a whole stack when it's really solid. But for most of us, what we find is that pieces of it are complete or solid. They feel good. They feel like they're working really well. And so when you look at maybe like your website, say you have a website, it's working really well, you've done a lot of work on personas, you have all the pieces in place, that could be a great place to start with some steps on personalization. And then you can roll out personalization to other parts of your stack as you continue to solidify those other areas. So you definitely don't have to wait. You absolutely don't have to wait. But you want to look at the places where you've really done a lot of work with that individual piece of technology and that aspect of the customer experience in order to begin personalization there. You don't want to begin personalization necessarily on a piece of technology or a part of your tech stack or customer experience that isn't as stable.
Karina, our next question comes from Scott, and he asks, I'm about to roll out a new CRM internally and want to ensure my sales team is bought in as many were fond of our legacy homegrown system. Any advice on how to position the new CRM so that it's viewed as an opportunity and not an obstacle?
Definitely, such a common problem. And there's a lot you can do here. It's a great opportunity to really enroll your sales team. And congratulations to you on knowing that this is something that you really need to do. The first thing I would recommend is starting with some listening. Find out what the sales team really liked about the last system and what their concerns are. Find out what they need to do every day to do their job successfully, gather intel about how you can meet those needs. And when you have all that information, then when you start the rollout process, you're really going to be able to speak to those needs and to show them how you are making a difference for them. With CRMs, you typically have at least some flexibility on how you implement them. Some of them you have a lot, some of them you have less, but there's usually at least some. So that really gives you a lot of information to ensure your rollout is really in line with the needs of the employees like the sales team who are using it every day. So when you take time first to listen, you can enroll them, you can allay their concerns, and you can also get tons of information for how you implement. So that's where I would start, is with listening.
Thanks, Karina. Our next question comes from Anne, and it's a common one I know you get very, very often. Do you have a recommendation on how many KPIs to track? Can you track too many?
You can definitely track too many. It's the old adage about priorities. If everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. The same is true of KPIs. If you track absolutely everything, then you won't be able to see the forest through the trees. So you can definitely have too many. I'd say, just based on experience, about 4 to 8 per piece of the funnel, like maybe engagement and reach, something like that, is about right. But how many overall is going to vary based on the complexity of your funnel and how many pieces of the funnel that you have. So I would really look to get the true KPIs for each piece of the funnel, and then however many you have overall is going to be dependent on how big it is, but try not to get so many that you get burdened with them.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of Karina and the Phase 2 team, thank you all for joining us today, and we hope we offered some value as you evaluate your current MarTech stack. If you would like to reach out to Karina or have any questions you would like us to answer offline, please feel free to contact us anytime via marketing@phase2technology.com. We will also be following up with a recording of today's webinar for easy sharing and on-demand access in case you missed any. And in the meantime, have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.